Welcome to an editing vlog, but I have got to get my timeline nailed down. Word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, I will get through this draft. It's just frustrating because there are certain things that chapter 1 has to do. My brain feels so fried. Hello and welcome to a new vlog. Welcome if you're new here. Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm a full-time university writing instructor and a part-time content creator and indie author. Welcome back if you're one of my lovely returning friends. It is great to have you all here. Welcome to an editing vlog. We are really diving in to the developmental edits to go from draft 1 to draft 2 of the next book in my small town romance series. So if you're new here, the series is called Independent Hearts. There are 3 books out in it so far: The Bookshop of Possibilities, The Inn of Hopes and Dreams, and The Candle Shop of Wicks and Whimsy. And now we are working on a yet-to-be-titled book featuring the character Molly and her farm shop. As I talked about in the last vlog, I have kind of stalled out on the editing process, but as I am filming this, it is Monday, April 7th, and I would really love to be done with draft 1 by the end of this month. I don't think that's going to happen. By the end of the first week of May is slightly more realistic, and that's like my next goal. So by like Monday, May 12th, which is the day that my final grades are due in my full-time job as a teacher, that is the day that, like, after that day, starting on the 13th, if not sooner. I might get them posted sooner, but that's the last day, and so the 13th is the last day where I might be starting summer break. It could start earlier. I'm hoping it starts earlier, but kind of by the 13th at the latest is when I would like to have draft 2 done, so that I can then start working towards draft 3. I talked a lot about this in the last vlog, so I'm not going to go on about it here. In this vlog, we are actually going to start editing. I am doing week-long student conferences all this week in my full-time job, so that does make vlogging a little bit of a challenge. I don't have like 2 full days this week that I can have a more flexible schedule and fit vlogging in. So I vlogged yesterday on Sunday. That was the last vlog, and now I'm gonna vlog Monday through Friday of this week, and I'm going to focus on my editing sessions each day. So this will be 5 days of editing, 5 days of editing, 5 days of bookwork, 5 days of trying not to lose my mind over developmental edit. Just to recap, if you did miss the last vlog, I created my kind of revision plan, revision notes for going from the first draft to the second draft, and I just want to kind of reiterate some of my goals for editing and for the first and for working towards the second draft, and just things I'm keeping in mind day after day, like throughout this week. My goal is to try to work on 1 chapter per day or 1 big continuity task per day. I'm actually going to be working on one of the continuity tasks today. I don't know that I'm going to do much editing in the manuscript itself, but I have got to get my timeline nailed down. I need to see where it's at, and then I need to make some notes along the way if I feel like my timeline is starting to stretch out too long. So when I was writing it, I did really good in the beginning of writing the first draft, of writing down chapter 1, scene 1 is this day, chapter 1, scene 2 is 2 hours later or later that day. So chapter 1, scene 1, mid-May. Chapter 2, scene 1 is same day, later that night. Chapter 2, scene 2 is the next morning. Chapter 3, scene 1 is less than 2 weeks later, which I put a note, almost June. So I need to go through chapter by chapter, scene by scene, and usually somewhere in the first sentence or in that first paragraph, I indicate what the passage of time is, and I need to write that down. So I don't know if I'm going to continue adding. I left space in my project notebook to like finish this, and then I didn't. I stopped at chapter 10. So I want to type up what I've got and just double check that it's accurate to the manuscript, and then I want to finish, so I need to get through the second half. I've done the first half, so I'm going to check that, and then I need to do the second half. And I think there's going to be some notes in the second half where I'm going to have to kind of say, you need to fix this because it's getting too long. I really don't want the story of the book to extend past August, because for reasons that will kind of make sense when you read this book and the next book, I want the next book to start on like September 1st. When I write these books, I tend to have an idea of the season, or at least the time span I want the book to cover. And because I'm writing in series, I kind of know ahead of time that this book will be this time frame, the next book will pick up where that one leaves off and is this time frame, and they just keep going. So it's really important to stick to that. If I let this book extend into September or October, it's going to screw up and run into my idea for book 5. So I really need to get the timeline in order. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. So I feel like that's an easy enough thing to start with, and then hopefully tomorrow I'll feel like I've already started editing. I can just dive in, even though I might not do any actual editing today. We'll see. I might get to the prologue a bit today, but the timeline has been something I've been putting off because it just feels so big, but it really needs to be done. Another goal that I'm keeping in mind this week, though, is, as I put in my editing notes, progress, not perfection. There's a lot of things that still need a lot of work, and I'm not going to get them completed in draft 2, but in order to try to get them completed by draft 3, I need to just work on them in draft 2. So I don't have to solve all the problems now. I just need to be making progress on things in draft 2. So draft 2 is kind of going to be the progress draft. It's not going to be the final draft. It's not going to be anywhere near the final draft. It might not even end up being the beta draft. I might not send it out to betas until the end of the 3rd draft. We'll see. That's what I'm telling myself to take some of the pressure off. So I just want to make progress, and I just want it to be, you can tell I've been doing student conferences today. I just want it to be noticeably improved from the current draft. That's what I've been telling my students all day. Your next version just has to be noticeably different and noticeably improved from your current draft. So yeah, that's where we're at. So I've got probably about an hour to work before I'm going to want to stop for dinner and stop to just relax. So I'm going to try to get the timeline done in 1 hour. I think I can do that. So that's the goal. But yeah, welcome to the vlog. Welcome to a week of editing. We will see how much editing I get done. Theoretically, if I'm not doing any editing today, if today is my continuity day and I'm working on the timeline, then by Friday we should have done the prologue. Chapter 1 might take me 2 days. So prologue might be Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday might be chapter 1, and then chapter 2 on Friday. We'll hopefully be through chapter 2 by Friday. So that's my intention at the start of this vlog and at the start of this week, and we're just gonna see how it goes. Okay. It didn't take me a full hour, but I am going to stop here because my brain is a little bit fried dealing with all those dates. But my timeline more or less works and makes sense. So I'm happy. I wanted it to end by August 31st, and it pretty much ends on August 31st. I don't say that in the book, but I do reference summer solstice and 4th of July, and so because the 4th of July is like a scene. It's a good scene. And so I could kind of count going from there, if chapter 9 scene 1 is the 4th of July and scene 2 is the next morning, that's the 5th. And then I can kind of go through next day, okay, that's the 6th, another next day, that's the 7th. But then I hit a snag where I said the first half of July, da 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 da. But by that point, we're already up to July 19th, so we're into the second half of July. And then chapter 16 starts with July trickling by. Dude, it's August by this point. So that needs to be fixed. But then if that is then August, going from a couple days later, another couple days later, next week, next day, a week later, a couple days later, I could kind of count out approximately it ends on August 31st, even though I don't say that's the date in the book. I do reference days, but I try not to get hung up on the calendar, but it has to make sense. If I've said it's July 4th, and then there've been a bunch of next day, 2 days later, 1 week later, 2 weeks later, and it's still, you know, the second week of July, that's a problem. So it's like I was talking about in the last vlog. There's things that I keep track of and things that I'm aware of that if I've done it right, you all won't notice. And it won't be something that you're really paying attention to. But if I get it wrong, it's the kind of thing that then you're wondering, but didn't she say this just a couple chapters ago or something? So it's those little continuity things. And I could probably write a story where these things don't matter, but somehow in the stories I write, they do end up mattering in some small way. So I think I can make it work. I've got everything written out in the timeline section of my research folder in my Scrivener binder. That's something I can then pull up side by side if I need to as I'm editing. I might also print it out and tape it into my notebook. I did not have the patience to write it down. So I might print it out and then tape it onto this page and the next 2 pages. And I've added some comments in the timeline section, but then I've also added comments in the relevant chapters. So when I get to editing them, thankfully I did well enough that it's just going to be a few quick tweaks where, like I say, July trickling by, I'll just change that to July turned to August. And where I say the first half of July, that'll just be the second half of July. So they will be easy fixes, but I'm feeling very proud of myself because this was actually this in my head felt like a really big task, and thankfully it's gone by pretty quick and everything I think is going to work out. There's no major issues. First half of the book, more or less the timeline all kind of works, going from May to June to summer solstice to then the 4th of July. So all of those days kind of work. I think I need to count those days up again, but I think they work. So I'm going to count those up really quick before I stop, but I think it works. So I've put a note in to kind of look at the first half, but I think that can also be made to work. There's a couple sections where there's one section where there's a big passage of time. So if needed, I can just condense that slightly. It's gonna be fine. It's all working out. The timeline is not an issue, basically. So that makes me very happy. But it is 4:39. It's been a long day and it's going to be a long week. So I need to pace myself. So if I can finish a little early today, that would actually be a good thing. So yes, I want to disconnect everything, unplug everything, and go sit down and relax. Conference weeks are always so much fun. I love seeing my students and being able to talk to them one-on-one for like up to 10 minutes, but they are just so exhausting. And then I had another meeting on top of that. So I've spent a lot of time staring at screens today and talking today. It's another reason why I struggle with vlogging during conference weeks, because I'm talking all day long to my students. So then talking to the camera for the vlog, not that easy. So yeah, I'm ready to close up the laptop and just go relax. But tomorrow we will do more editing. It's after 5 o'clock. I've managed almost an hour. My goal was 1 chapter or 1 hour. I did do the prologue. The prologue is done for now. Like, the prologue is done for draft 2. I'm happy to move on to chapter 1. So that's what I've done. I'm maybe a quarter of the way through chapter 1, but I hit a point where, like, have I said like where this shop is located? I'm trying to remember. I've always had it in my head that Bryn's pottery shop is on the corner of, like, at the very end of the high and on a corner. But then as I started envisioning this book, and Molly's store, I started envisioning Molly's shop on the corner, but I don't think that's right. And so I've just spent the last like 15 minutes looking through the first 3 books in their Scrivener files and like searching for references of Bryn, references of the pottery shop. And I don't think I said anything specific, but like I need to commit to something in this book and like go forward. But now I'm starting to wonder if I need to reread all 3 Independent Hearts books. I did do that, and I did take a lot of notes, but I might read back through them anyway. I'll be able to see what's highlighted because I've already like annotated it, but I think I would rather read them again because I haven't read Candle Shop. I've reread the first 2 books, but I don't think I reread Candle Shop. So I'd rather reread them than just go based on my annotations. But I am starting to feel like I might need to do that and actually write some stuff down this time. Like, not just annotate it in the Kindle app, but actually write down the notes. I'm so bad at writing stuff down, and so I'll have continuity things scattered throughout all the different Scrivener files, and I keep meaning to like put that all in order, but then I always forget to like put that into a designated place for like all my continuity notes related to all the books in the series. But yeah, I need to be deciding, if I haven't put that in stone already, I need to like decide which of their shops is on the corner. Where are they located on the high? I think because I think in the drawing I did way back at the beginning of book 1, the rough map I wrote down, I put the Candle Shop on the corner and the pottery shop kind of in the middle. And I think it's actually, I think I ended up reversing that. I did not stick to this map, so I need to stick to something. I have drawn out or written out a tracker page in my project notebook. So I've written down all the chapters from prologue and chapter 1 through the last chapter and the epilogue. So as I finish something, I can cross it off and get that satisfaction. I've written down my 4 continuity tasks. I might add a 5th one. I can reread the books a little bit later. Like I can reread that as part of as part of draft 3. I feel like I've got enough continuity stuff to do now. So yesterday I finished the timeline. We talked about that. So I still need to figure out the history and the layout of Molly's shop and the history and layout of the family farm. And then I need to draw out the family tree. And then I wrote down my goals, which are just make progress. I say just make progress. It doesn't have to be perfect yet. It doesn't have to be perfect ever, but it definitely doesn't have to be perfect yet. Do 1 chapter or 1 hour per day. So like today I did roughly an hour. I did finish the prologue, but the prologue is only 1,200 words. So that doesn't really count as a full chapter. But I knew chapter 1 was going to take me more than a day. It might even take me more than 2, but I did roughly work for an hour. I do not feel bad for not working for a full hour today because I didn't get started until almost 4:30 and it's 5:22. I don't want to work until 5:30, and then I knew I wanted to update you all. Conferences went a little bit later today, and like on Thursday I might have to try. I need to look at my schedule. Thursday I might have to try to do my editing in the morning because I have conferences all day and then I have a meeting from 4 to 5 at the very end of the day, and I'm not going to feel like editing. So I should probably put that in my calendar to edit first thing in the morning before I start work for the day. Edit IH for this week. I wish I could have been more productive last week and like actually gotten started on editing last week, because this week with conferences and my schedule, it's just not normal, and I don't have as much time in the mornings before work because I'm going hiking, and I can't flip my schedule to do editing in the morning and hiking at the end of the day because it's 87 degrees out there right now. It's warm. It's not hot, but it's warm, and I would not want to be out hiking right now. So I'm just, yeah, it is what it is. This week, I'm telling myself now, like, it's only Tuesday, and I don't want to say that I don't want to assume I'm not going to get any work done this week, but I do need to like say now earlier in the vlog, I might not get that much editing done this week because it's, ignore my drawing rack in the, I've been trying to sit like this so you wouldn't see my laundry drawing behind me, but I'm too tired to get up and move it and then sit back down. When I get up, I'm not sitting back down in this chair. So we're just gonna pretend that I don't have laundry drying behind my chair. But yeah, I know I'm not gonna get that much done this week. But I want to get started and I want to get something done. And even if it takes me all week to get through chapter 1, then so be it. I will still be happy. I feel like there's not that much progress to talk about. I made a really nice little tracker for all the good that's gonna do me. I'm really good at organizing myself. I'm not always that great at like actually doing the thing. I don't know, I'm still at that stage of editing where I have the whole manuscript ahead of me and so many things I need to sort out in my head, and it just feels so overwhelming. And the only advice I can give myself, and the only advice I can give all of you, whether you're working on a novel or a thesis or a dissertation, like a academic writing or business writing, but anytime you're working on a big project and you start to feel overwhelmed, just remind yourself that you will get it done. Like it will get done. This draft will get edited. I will get to a third draft. It'll all be fine. It feels like I'm at the bottom of a mountain staring up at the peak, but it just step by step, word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, I will get through this draft, but I can only focus on one sentence and one paragraph at a time. So I didn't get all the way through. I'm going to highlight the sentence where I kind of stopped so that tomorrow I know where I'm picking back up. So I have essentially edited, if I highlight and scroll, I have edited 2,300 words today, plus the 1,260 something for the prologue. So I have edited about a chapter's worth so far today. So I'm fine. I'm fine. It's all good. I've made progress, and that's what we're focusing on. I only got about 30 minutes done today, but I did finish chapter 1. I have now created a new section at the bottom of my tracker page of chapters to revisit. I'm hoping there won't be that many chapters on that list, but I just feel like chapter 1, I don't think I can fully edit it right now. I need to like move on to chapter 2 and chapter 3. I need to see if I want to change where my chapter breaks happen. Basically, chapter 1 is too long. Unfortunately, chapter 2 and chapter 3 are also kind of right at the top end of where I prefer my like the length I prefer them to be. So I don't really want to take words from chapter 1 and put them into chapter 2, because then that will make chapter 2 too long. But I'm looking to see in these first few chapters if there are different places where I could break the chapter. There's 3 places in chapter 1 where I could potentially do it. So if I could find some possible breaks in chapter 2 and 3 and just between all the words of those first 3 chapters, find a place to break them up into 4 relatively evenly spaced, evenly long chapters. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I did manage to cut some words from chapter 1. It was 6,411 words. It is now 6,084 words. So I cut a few hundred words from it, but 6,000 words is still really long. I will do a 6,000 word chapter later in a book if if there's just no way around it. Sometimes it just does not make sense to break up a chapter depending on what scenes happen and stuff, or if it's all one scene. Sometimes it's like a big moment in the book, and so breaking it up into 2 chapters like just feels a bit weird. So I don't mind if it's like chapter 14 is a longer chapter, but chapter 1, I just kind of feel like I prefer having the first few chapters to be technically like below 4,000 words, and chapter 2 and 3 are both like around 4,500 words, so they're already a little bit long. So if I could break these first 3 chapters up into 4 chapters, that might work, but I need to read chapter 2 and 3 and see if there are natural scene breaks in those chapters that could just become chapter breaks. Because like if I look at the timeline, which I did print out my timeline and stick it with washi tape into my notebook. So there are 2 scenes in chapter 2 and 3 scenes in chapter 3. So I'll take a look at those over the next couple days. I might be able to break things up. But like chapter 1 is essentially all one scene. There's a couple time jumps, like it goes from the afternoon to the evening, but it's still kind of essentially the same scene. It's just frustrating because there are certain things that chapter 1 has to do in these books, in this series. Every chapter 1 kind of follows the same like structure. Now I have to look. I remember clearly how chapter 1 ends in book 1, but now I'm like blanking on where chapter 1 ends. Yeah. Chapter for book 2. Yeah, that's right. Now I remember that. That was a big moment for chapter 1. Yeah. Same with book 3. But looking at those moments in those books, one of the moments I flagged in chapter 1 could work and would be similar to the end of chapter moments in the first 3 books. So I just need to think about that, and I need to look at the other ones, because the first moment that I broke it, as a potential break, it would make chapter 1 2,400 words, which is a little bit short, but that could still work. If I break it in the second place, it would make chapter 1 3,800 words, which either would work. But basically, in these books, and here's books 2 and 3. These are the proof copies, which is why they've got the not for resale bar. But in the books in this series, chapter 1, now I gotta get these put back. I keep all of my proof copies right here, partly for moments like this when I'm like, what did I do? I can just pull it off the shelf and look. So yeah, chapter 1 in each of these books usually ends with a pivotal moment somehow related to the business. A moment for the character where their business is about to change in ways that they don't yet understand. And so I want that moment to be strong enough that people want to keep reading. And I really like the moment that it currently ends on. But if I break it at either of these places, these first 2 places, then what is currently the end of chapter moment of chapter 1 would become the end of chapter moment of chapter 2. So it could still work. I do think it's a really good end of chapter moment. Pro tip, not that I'm that much of a pro, but pro tip, if you want to keep readers in fiction, this applies mostly for fiction, if you want to keep readers reading from one chapter to the next, end a chapter mid-moment, mid-scene, like on a gasp of something, on a bit of a cliffhanger, so that they have to turn the page to start reading the next chapter. So many times readers we'll tell ourselves, I'll just finish this chapter. When I get to the end of this chapter, I'll put the book down and I'll go to sleep, or whatever. You don't want to give them an opportunity to do that. You want to end your chapters on a little bit of a cliffhanger. I've talked about this before. You don't want to do it in every chapter, or then people will just know. Like when I'm watching something on Netflix, TV series do this all the time. They end each episode on a big cliffhanger, and it's what gets you to just keep watching to the next episode and binge an entire series in one day. We've all been there. Please tell me we've all been there. It's not just me. So that's very, very common. But when you know that every episode does that, if you're anything like me, you just learn when there's that lull in the scenes, like 10 to 15 minutes before the end of an episode, that's where you stop and then pick back up the next day. So I don't end every chapter on that kind of cliffhanger feel, but every few chapters I will. And the first 2 chapters I do tend to do that to some extent, just so that I know that people will get 2 or 3 chapters into a book before they put it down for the first time. I don't expect people to binge read my books. I love it when they do, but I don't expect that. But I don't want anyone putting it down at the end of chapter 1 and not feeling like they need to pick it back up to keep reading. So I do try to, the first quarter of the book, I try to set a really strong pace. For like that first 20 to 25% of the book, I try to keep the pace really, really tight. I don't mind as a writer or as a reader if the pace kind of then slows down a little bit in places, not like overall, but if some chapters are just a little bit quieter and feel a little bit easier and just not as like high paced, that's fine, but then the pace has to pick back up. And this is where the difference between pace and momentum is really important, which that's not my concept. Where do I have that book? I honestly need to get this book out again anyway, because it's good to have on hand when I'm editing. Intuitive Editing by Tiffany Yates Martin. You can see how much I flagged this. I love this book. She talks about the difference between pace and momentum. Roughly, pace is the overall speed of the book and how quickly you move through the book from the first chapter to the last chapter. Momentum is about every chapter, every scene of every chapter, every paragraph of every scene, moving you forward in the story somehow. Everything should be advancing the plot or the character in some way, and everything should be revealing something about the plot or the character that is helping the reader feel like they are moving forward through the story. So plot and momentum are 2 different things, but both are equally important. And so even when you slow the pace down ever so slightly, because pace is one of those things where if you set a really fast pace throughout the entire book, your reader gets to the end feeling like they can't breathe, like they're out of breath, which for some books, like a thriller, kind of works. Although even in thrillers, I do appreciate when there's like 1 or 2 chapters scattered throughout where I can like pause and catch my breath. So pace is really, really important, and you can vary your pace throughout. So like a book can have a kind of fast pace overall, but still have a couple chapters or a few chapters throughout where the pace is a little bit slower and just a little bit more like I can breathe kind of a thing. But no matter how fast or slow your pace is throughout the book or in the book overall, there has to still be momentum. And if it slows down, if the pace slows down so much that the reader loses momentum, that's a problem. And I have found that varying my chapter lengths, so having some a little bit longer, some a little bit shorter, varying my scene lengths, varying when a chapter ends on kind of a big, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next moment, versus chapters that end with something that hints that more is coming but feels like that has wrapped up that chapter and it's not quite so cliffhanger. Varying all of these things, I'm still managing pace and momentum overall, but it keeps the reader guessing a little bit. At least I hope. That's certainly what I try. When it comes to having a really long chapter, I feel like 3,500 to 4,000 words is the sweet spot. Shorter than that, and that's having a shorter chapter below 3,500 words is useful in places, but I wouldn't want to do it all the time, or it feels like I'm constantly finishing chapters, and it feels more like I'm reading scenes than chapters, and that's probably a whole different conversation, and maybe that's just a personal preference to me. I don't know. And then on the longer end, I try not to have chapters longer than 5,000 words, but every now and then I will have like a 5,500 to 6,000 word chapter, but I try to make those really few and far between. And I definitely try not to have them, like I'm looking at the rest of the book. Yeah, it's chapter 1 is the longest chapter. None of them, the next longest after that is chapter 13, which right now is 5,300 words. Which for a chapter 13, that far in the book, I'm fine with that. I will try to cut that and tighten that up, but if it still stays above 5,000, I'm not mad about that. But for a chapter 1, 6,000 words is too long. So I'm gonna move on to editing the rest of the chapters. I'm not gonna linger. I'm not gonna try to make chapter 1 perfect right now, but I will circle back to it before I declare draft 2 done. And then it might also be just one of the big chapters I focus on for draft 3. So we will see, because I don't want to make any big decisions without running it by my alpha readers and seeing what they think. And yeah, so anyway, it is after 5 o'clock. It's 5:18. I'm done for the day. I am so tired and ready to go. I have had office hours, I have had a department meeting, and I have had conferences before and after the department meeting. So I have been on Zoom for most of the day, starting from 10 a.m. and I'm tired. I'm really tired, and I'm done, and I'm ready to go make dinner and go relax, and I will tackle chapter 2 tomorrow, and probably in the morning, because I'm working straight up until 5 o'clock. So if I don't get any editing done in the morning, I don't think I'll get any book editing done at all tomorrow, and I really don't want to do that. I don't want to skip a day this early in the editing process. So Thursday went really well. After all the stress and worry and uncertainty in editing the day before, I had a big breakthrough on Thursday. So it started with a beautiful sunrise hike. I got out here extra early because the sun is coming up extra early as well. So I got out here about 6:15 and managed to hike the entire way pretty much in the shade of the mountain, which was fantastic. Throughout the hike, I started thinking about the book. So hiking is often a really good writing tool and thinking tool for me. I can think through plot ideas, character ideas, problems I'm having, things like that. And so I was thinking about chapter 1 and the issues I was talking about yesterday, thinking about where I wanted to put that chapter break. I just knew instinctively that chapter 1 needs to be shorter. It needs to be split up into 2 chapters. There were 3 places where I could do that, and it just kind of hit me on the hike that if I cut it at the first place where I had the idea of breaking it, it would create a really good setup for the inciting incident. Chapter 1 will end with the setup for the inciting incident, and chapter 2, the new chapter 2, will end with the inciting incident itself. It makes sense in my brain. I enjoyed the rest of the hike. The sun came out at the very end. It was really feeling energized and excited, and I could not wait to get home. I knew that this morning was going to be my editing morning. I didn't go straight home. I went to my favorite coffee shop, Press, and I got myself an iced latte and also I don't know what they're called, but they're amazing. They're this like almondy pastry cake thing. They're flaky like an almond croissant on the outside, but then they're like a cake on the inside. They're amazing. So I picked up one of those, got home, got myself showered and cleaned up after the hike, and sat down at my desk for a morning editing session. I was able to sit down right around 8 a.m. so that gave me enough time to edit for an hour before I needed to start my work day. Timing was just on my side this morning. Having that realization on the hike, it really did re-energize me with editing. I feel like chapter 1 has been this huge block throughout the early stages of this editing process, just knowing I needed to do something with chapter 1, but not knowing what. Now I know what. So that's what I started off. I started off the editing session with breaking up chapter 1 into 2 chapters. I'm not renaming the rest of the chapters yet. I probably should. I didn't do that this morning. I might do that tomorrow, but I wanted to just get going. So for now in Scrivener, they're labeled chapter 1 part 1 and chapter 1 part 2, and then chapters 2 through 20 are still labeled the same. I didn't want to take time renaming all the chapters, but I then was able to edit chapter 2, which will now be chapter 3. And so with the new chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, each chapter ends moving the story along. And so each chapter ending now feels like this is a very specific and deliberate place that the chapter is ending, and it makes sense, and it also still maintains that momentum going forward in the story. Like, by the end of each next chapter, you've definitely made a big step forward in the story, but also by shortening the chapters, it's going to keep the pacing up for these first few chapters, which is exactly what I want and what we were talking about yesterday. So I feel really good about that. What I still need to do, so as we talked about yesterday, I've got a list of chapters that need to be revisited. Chapter 1 is still on there because the new chapter 1 is now only about 2,400 words. I want to add more to build up to the ending of chapter 1 to make that moment more impactful. In the original chapter 1, because it was happening in the first third of that chapter, it wasn't that impactful, and I wanted to make it more of a moment. And so I think it will work really well as the ending of the new chapter 1, but I still need to go back in and add probably about 500 words to really strengthen that new chapter 1 and make it feel like it is its own introductory chapter to the book. But yeah, really good day editing, feel really good about the project, and wish I could just keep going, but I did have to stop work and get ready for student conferences. Okay, it's Friday, it's the end of Friday, it is time for me to stop working, or stop everything. It's time for me to stop. It's just time. So I finished teaching work an hour ago. I've managed to do 2 chapters in that time. So I'm feeling very proud of myself. I don't know how I managed it. My brain feels so fried after a week of Zoom conferences. I am so tired. I am so tired. My brain is done. Between conferences and editing this week, I have nothing left in me. So I don't think I'm going to do any work on this over the weekend, but I will pick back up on Monday with chapter 5, which is technically chapter 6 because we split chapter 1 in 2. But like I said, I haven't renumbered them. I might renumber them on Monday just so that then I know what chapter I'm technically on. I need to start thinking about chapter 5 as being chapter 6 because that's technically what it is. The 2 chapters I did today didn't have a whole lot of big issues, so everything's kind of moving along. Looking ahead at the notes or the comments on the next one I'm going to work on, those don't look that complicated, and it's a 4,600 word chapter, so not too long. The 2 chapters I did today were both, which reminds me I need to update the chapter or the word count for chapter 4. Remember to do that for chapter 3, but chapter 3 started at 4,562 words and it is now 4,540, but I added a lot and I cut a lot, so it was a net decrease of only 22 words, but I think I actually cut probably about 100, but then I added about that same amount. Chapter 4 went up. Chapter 4 was 45.85 and it's now 47.75. But that's not bad. That's still good. Total manuscript is still under 95,000. It's 94,930. So keeping an eye on that. That's really good. 94,000. Well, round up 95,000. I feel like I've got about 5,000 words I can add total. There's a couple places where I know I want to add. Like I know I want to add 500 words to the new chapter 1. And I think chapter 10 or 11, I want to add a scene, a whole scene in that one. That'll probably be around like 1,000 words. Not a big scene, but just a little scene. It's about 1,000 words to be added to that. So I'm doing well word count wise. I'm keeping an eye on that, but I'm mostly focusing on chapter word counts and just making sure that I'm not letting any one chapter get too long. So I don't mind adding a couple hundred words to a chapter like I essentially did with chapter 4 because it's still below 5,000 and we're also at this point getting farther into the book that having a slightly longer chapter isn't a bad thing. I'm so tired. I'm so tired, but I did really, really well. I mean, essentially, you know, we've done I've done chapters 1 through 4, but chapter 1 became 2 chapters, so we could say I've edited 5 chapters so far this week. Plus, I've sorted out more or less the timeline. There's going to be some little things that I'm already like having to change as I'm going through it. So now that I've got my timeline notes as I go through each chapter, if there's something that needs to be edited related to the timeline, I'm doing that. I've made good progress this week, and that's what matters. That's what I'm focusing on. That's what I care about, and that's what makes me happy. I'm just so glad. I feel like I've got moving again. Like I was saying, I think in the last vlog, the train is moving down the tracks again. I don't feel like we've really picked up pace. I don't feel like I'm going at speed yet, but I'm getting there. I'm building up my working pace and I'm making steady progress each day. I do think next week when I'm not doing conferences, I think I'll be able to get through things a little bit faster. That being said, I've got 16 chapters essentially left if we include the epilogue, and I've still got, if I wanted to be done by Friday the 2nd, I still then have 15 days of editing days, assuming I'm not doing any editing on the weekends. So as long as I'm doing at least 1 chapter a day, I should be done with draft 2 by around the time I wanted to be done. But I think there'll be some days, like today I did 2 chapters. So I think next week and the week after that and the week after that, I think there will be some days where I can do 2 or even 3 chapters in one day, or do a chapter and one of the bigger continuity tasks that I've got, and I'll feel like I'm making progress a little bit faster. So this week has made me feel like if I can be this productive during a week when I'm this busy, because I've been so busy this week. So if I can still be this productive during a week like this one, then I think over the next 3 weeks, when my schedule will be still busy but a little bit more flexible, I think I can make some good progress. Yesterday went great. Editing in the morning went really, really well. So I think I might try to do that at least a few days next week. I wish I'd been able to do that this morning, but I had to go to Whole Foods this morning. So editing had to happen at the end of the day. But my brain feels so tired. So I think next week, on the days that I don't have to go to campus, I think on campus days, I can edit at least a little bit in the morning. So I'm going to try to do that. And then on non-campus days, I can get up, go for a sunrise hike, and then sit down and get my hour of editing done before I log on and start doing teaching work. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's going well, and I'm feeling good about it. Fingers crossed I get draft 2 done before before the end of the semester, that would be really, really nice. That would be ideal. So stay tuned, watch this space, we'll see what happens. But for now, I'm going to end this vlog because I'm so tired. I should not be speaking to you all at the moment. I really, really shouldn't. I need to just go sit down and relax and do nothing for the rest of the evening. I think I'm going to go make a Pims because it is 96 degrees outside. So it feels like it's officially summer. So yeah, I'm going to treat myself to a nice dinner, treat myself to a Pims, and just relax and chill out for the rest of the night and have a nice relaxing weekend because I've earned it. We don't need to earn those sorts of things, but I have definitely earned a nice relaxing weekend. I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Really appreciate both of those things. More book editing content coming. We are still heading into, like, there's still so much work left for this book, but this is what we do here. We vlog the work, we vlog the progress, and sometime later this summer, you'll see what this looks like when I publish it. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and that would be amazing. Say hi in the comments. You can stop in the description box on your way down to the comments and find my newsletter email sign up link and links to my books if you want to catch up on the previous books in this series. And then in the comments, you can leave me some typing and editing related emojis to let me know which one of you lovely people have made it all the way to the end of this vlog. And as for our question of the vlog, it is getting quite hot here in the desert. It was 98 degrees today, which means it probably actually got up to 99, but I know I officially saw on my watch 98. So it's getting hot. It feels like summer, and I'm also writing a book that's set in summer, and so that's got me thinking about like my favorite summer treats and my favorite summer foods, and just foods that I tend to only have, foods and drinks that I tend to only have in the summer, like when it gets above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I'd like to know, what are your favorite like summer treats? Is there like a certain drink or certain foods that you tend to only have during those hotter months? For me, I really love like stuff with pesto. Like pesto just seems like an ultimate summer thing for me. And Pims as a drink. I love a Pims cup, and having a Pims in the summer when it's like really, really hot, it's really, really nice. I think that's what I'm going to treat myself to tonight. So yeah, let me know what your favorite summer hot weather food and drink treats are. I am well aware that some of you might not be ready to consume those things just yet, because for most of you, it's not summer yet, but it is feeling like summer here, and so I am just leaning into that. I picked up some pesto at Whole Foods today. I need to just make my own because that would be probably more cost effective. But yeah, I'm leaning into it and just accepting if it's gonna feel like summer out there, I'm going to embrace all my favorite summer treats. So yeah, what's your favorite summer treat? Let me know in the comments and I will chat to you all down there. And yeah, I will see you all. I'm gonna stop now. I really am. I will see you all very soon in the next vlog. Thank you very much for watching this one. Bye!